Welcome to the Political Insider, where you're going to get an update of the news that affects your life here in South Africa. And before we kick off, I'd like to ask you please to subscribe to the channel. We want this Political Insider to grow so that everybody can get news that is useful. And hopefully we get many South Africans watching this and making the right choices for the best interests of the country. Let's talk about the best interests of KwaZulu-Natal. Now, KwaZulu-Natal, as we all know, got a seismic shock in the last elections in 2024, where the ANC not only hurtled downwards, went all the way down to 17% of the vote in KwaZulu-Natal, but there was a great surge in support for Jacob Zuma's Umkhonto we Sizwe party. Now, this created a very, very tight situation for who runs the province of KwaZulu-Natal. Now, you would have heard that there's been votes of no confidence and attempts to overturn the current provincial government in KwaZulu-Natal, which is run by a coalition of the IFP, the ANC, and the Democratic Alliance, together with one seat from the National Freedom Party. Now, let me explain to you, because you may watch this and it might fall into that category where you nod as if you know, but you don't really know the details. But the details themselves are quite fascinating and have got major repercussions. So the Umkhonto we Sizwe party and EFF together end up with 39 seats in the KwaZulu-Natal legislature out of 80. Obviously, you need 41 to create the government and to have the premier. Now, what we have is we have the IFP, ANC, DA coalition have 40 seats. So the one seat owned by the National Freedom Party is mighty, mighty, mighty important. Now, who are the National Freedom Party? Well, the National Freedom Party is a bit of a joke of an organization. It was a breakaway from the old IFP of Mangosuthu Buthelezi. This happened more than a decade ago. And the leader there, Magwaza Msibi, a woman who had got unhappy with Mangosuthu, had left, started this party. It had a whole lot of promise, but it fizzled out. Sadly, the woman was in ill health and eventually passed away. But along with her passing away, a lot of the NFP support also withered. And the last election was clearly the last hurrah for the NFP, that managed to rack up 19,548 votes. You heard me correctly, 19,548 votes. Out of how many that were cast in KwaZulu-Natal? More than 3.5 million. It was almost statistically irrelevant. They got just more than 0.5% of the vote. But because of a mathematical anomaly, they end up with one seat. I think if they lost a couple more votes, they would have had no seats at all. Now, that one seat, and remember, NFP nationally got very few votes other than those 19,000 odd, and they have 0.12% of the national vote. And they are busy holding the province of KwaZulu-Natal hostage. They themselves have a leadership crisis because you've got different factions that claim to be the leaders of the party. And the person who's prevailed is a gentleman by the name of Ivan Barnes, who runs the NFP, and he's onto a good grift. This is the one guy who I can't blame. Right? And this is Ivan Barnes, who managed to seemingly outmaneuver the other people that had claims to be the leader of the party. So he now claims, the keys to the safe, and he's the leader of the NFP. And because of their one seat, they have a woman in the KwaZulu-Natal provincial legislature called Mbali Shinga. She seems to be a bit of a firecracker, this lady. She seems to be quite good at her job. She's the MEC for social development, and she's very, very, seems to be somebody who's out there to do her job. But if you've got one seat in a party that is probably going to disappear in the next election, boy, you need to maximize it. You need to get about as much money for that seat as you can. And let's be clear about what we're talking about. Why would NFP go one way or the other? It's either got to be for positions or for something more than positions. Well, they already have a position in their current alliance with the IFP, DA, and ANC. So therefore, it's got to be that the other party comes along with one of those Woolworths shopping bags. It's got to be the only explanation. Otherwise, it wouldn't be that in a year they change their ideology towards, these other parties. They come out of the IFP. Ideologically, they belong in the coalition that they're in. But anyway, the point is this. They had a vote of no confidence in the Premier of KwaZulu-Natal at the end of last year. And everybody was expecting this change to happen with the NFP switching sides. But Mbali Shinga decided no, and on principle voted to keep the same arrangement intact. And this has caused howls of protest because I think that Mr. Barnes had already sold the vote to the party of MK and EFF. And what happened? There was a lot of unhappiness. Now the leader has suspended Mbali and Shinga so that they can vote again and hopefully this time hand power over to Umkhonto weSizwe and the EFF. Once again, I've got to say, the one person you can't blame here is Ivan Barnes. Quite simply, he's got one chance to sell his vote. And sell it now, sell it again to the other side. When they come back, it's going to be a free-for-all. This is going to be a politics of corruption. This is KZN. We know how things work over there. Right? So this is created a problem. So let's imagine that Barnes gets his way, gives the vote now to Umkhonto weSizwe and EFF. They have 40 seats, and so do the other coalition. What happens then? Well, what happens then is that they have a vote for the premiership, for the premier candidate. So the ANC, IFP, DA coalition will put forward their candidate, and the other guys will put in their candidate, as well as candidates for speaker, and they'll go to the vote. If the vote is deadlocked 40 all, no speaker, no premier, the legislature is effectively paralyzed. The government, the national government, puts in a caretaker government, and that carries on. If this happens after a while, there's a probable dissolution of the political structure, and you could even have a fresh election, a fresh provincial election in KZN, which I think is a good idea. You could have a fresh election if this deadlock persists. But what I'm very, very interested in seeing is the fact that in something as important as this, let's just say the NFP do give their vote to Umkhonto weSizwe, as it looks like they want to, it's going to matter who is in the KwaZulu-Natal provincial legislature when they actually hold the vote. Now, we know that our government officials are quite prone to taking the odd day off, or perhaps going on the odd overseas trip, or being ill, or anything else that might prevent people from going to work. It might come down to who's there on the day. Who can actually get more of their 40 people to get to the vote or not. And then, of course, as we saw in those terrible scenes towards the end of last year, when Umkhonto weSizwe refused to accept the result and actually was attacking the Speaker of Parliament, physically hitting a woman, that's great optics for MK, and the EFF were climbing in as well, is will they accept the result? I think what should happen is that the current coalition that's in place, IFP, DA, and ANC, should send the ANC to do the negotiation. They're on the IFP and the Democratic Alliance are uniquely poorly equipped to deal with this kind of politics, because this is the politics of literally doing what it takes for a person to vote for you, and the ANC is the best at the game. So I think they should send somebody from the ANC, because what's at stake here is potentially important, and I am not condoning crooked behavior, but hey, we live in South Africa and we live with it every day. I think that it's going to be very interesting what happens in KZN and could have massive implications for what happens to the rest of our politics in South Africa. It's a big story. We've got to keep an eye on what happens there, but it's going to come to the boil pretty soon. We covered our naval exercises quite extensively. You know, our biggest allies, China, Russia, and Iran, conducted naval exercises in Simonstown. This was a Chinese-led activity. We did, by the way, have one working ship. We've got a frigate, Amatola, and a couple of tugboats, so we were well represented. China brought a destroyer and a frigate, and Russia brought a corvette, and Iran brought a destroyer and a warship, and even the United Arab Emirates were there with a corvette. And it's not the Chev Corvette car, this is a boat corvette. The most noteworthy moment of the whole exercise so far, which carries on till the end of next week, was the Russian ship flying the South African flag upside down, which just sort of shows you the farce that we have with this naval exercise. But I'm sure you slept easy knowing that this Minister of Finance, this Minister of Defense, has got your back. She looks ready for battle, wearing a bulletproof vest. I'm not sure who's going to go after her, but hey, we are well represented by this Minister of Defense. I found it very interesting as well that China and Russia brought their own tankers to refill their ships. This, of course, is a massive vote of no confidence in South Africa's ability to provide support. And there were some questions as to whether the Iranians would stick around. This was a genuine question as to whether Iranian soldiers, seamen, and equipment would stay here on a naval exercise while there are big riots and protests in Iran. And I want to just talk about that for a moment. Reportedly, more than 500 deaths so far in these protests in Iran. And it's a subject that is quite a complex situation. The way I read it is that the Ayatollahs will remain in power in Iran for the simple reason that right now there is no alternative to that government. There's been no democracy since 1979. So we have got, 46 years of every bit of opposition being squashed. And there is nobody else that could assume that position. And we see the son of the last Shah, Reza Pahlavi, on TV, hoping to turn the clock back to 1979. Don't be fooled by this. The Shah was very, very unpopular. That's what led to the revolution. And I don't think that history has made him ever, in the whole era of the Shah, any more positive. He wasn't really a force for good in the country. And I think that by putting him on television, in actual fact, will prolong the tenure of the Ayatollahs. I think if these protests were to lead somewhere, there would need to be a popular movement led by somebody that would have to emerge. No country is going to say, let's overthrow these guys and have nobody in control. We've seen it in so many countries that there has to be a popular alternative. In Afghanistan, there was always the Taliban lurking on the edges, ready to resume power. And it could be the militia, for example, in Syria, where you've got a popular rebel leader who could be seen as somebody that could take over. It could be a trade union, in the case of Poland, when they had their protests back in the 80s, where their trade union Solidarity was organized, had a leader who could become the leader of the country. Then people would rally behind them. Or it could even be a theocracy, as happened in the Iranian Revolution 1.0. But until there is a credible alternative, I don't think this is going to go anywhere, because right now the Ayatollahs it's just too easy for them to stamp out any protest that we're seeing. So Iranians are going to die. They're going to die in vain. Even if Donald Trump intervenes, as he said he might, who will he put in place as the leader of the country? Leadership would need to emerge. Right, so we don't get too excited that things are about to change anytime soon in Iran. Let's talk local government elections. This is something that obviously will dominate the situation, the South African picture, especially now that we've got that annoyance, always kick off the year, listening about the ANC birthday celebrations, With that out of the way, it's now all systems go for the local government elections, and the politicking has started. The politicking, as you know, starts at the ANC's birthday celebrations, where every time, especially ahead of elections, they promise renewal, improved service delivery, what. They promise you everything that you can imagine, sunshine and rainbows, but on the ground, the roads are still, cracking up. The water is still not flowing through the taps. The comrades are still got their hands elbow deep in the gravy trough. So it's not about to happen soon. We see that in the city of Johannesburg, where there was some cosmetic work done for the G20 summit towards the end of last year. Their makeup has now faded. Johannesburg is back to the mess it was before they started fixing it up in the G20. You can't find a metro policeman unless he's looking for lunch money. You can't find anybody doing their work on the streets. So back we go to potholes, no water, spotty electricity, etc. This is just a avatar for what happens everywhere around the country. So the ANC are not exactly going to do anything about their service delivery. The DA are going to be doing an interesting thing. And it once again revolves around Johannesburg. And that is that probably as soon as the next week or two, Helen Zille will be entering the Johannesburg City Council as a proportional representative for the Democratic Alliance in the Johannesburg City Council. One of their PR candidates is going to be upgraded to a ward councillor, which leaves a gap. Could be a good opportunity for her to go in there, start understanding how the council works. All the cameras are going to be on her. It's going to make things very uncomfortable, and it's really going to put into sharp focus the probable fight between her and the ANC's newly elected Johannesburg leader, Loyiso Masuku, who we've got to remember was suspended along with her husband for COVID-19 money that was misappropriated. He was in the provincial government, and of course he resigned, but she was part of that. She was cleared of it, or certainly no charges. She was unsuspended, so she's there. It's going to be interesting to see how that fight shapes up. And Loyiso Masuku, you have got a platform here to come and speak to me anytime you like and tell us what a great job that you are going to be doing. I want to end off with something to do with the economy. As you know, very important for the success of the Government of National Unity that the economy does well. Now, there were signs that the economy was doing a little bit better, but there was something quite worrying that emerged in the last week or so, and that was the Purchasing Managers Index, which is a gauge of the manufacturing sector activity. It fell in December to its lowest level since April 2020, which was at the height of the COVID-19 lockups. Now, this is a very, very bad sign because there were lower interest rates. There was all sorts of signs that our economy was reversing. I think this has got to do with trade sanctions and so on. And this is the sector that has the most ability to produce jobs, and that is if we make stuff. But yet it's at a near all-time low. Some of the factors put forward is the closing of the Cape Town harbour. It was closed because of high winds. We must be one of the few countries where harbours get closed because of wind. You would have thought in this day and age you can beat that, but apparently we can't. Other factors put forward: unreliable electricity supply and our business killer legislation. We know all about our business killer legislation. We know about our trade war with the US. This is definitely going to hurt GDP growth numbers. So let's not get too optimistic about what the growth figures look like in South Africa. I don't know if it was such a wonderful idea and continues to be a wonderful idea, like the naval exercise, to antagonize the biggest purchaser of our manufactured goods. I've no doubt that China and Russia, for differing reasons, have no interest in buying our manufactured goods. We know that China manufactures their own goods and Russia doesn't buy stuff. right? Our trade with Russia is almost negligible. So this economy is still going to have a hard time, especially with some of the bad decisions that were made. But you have made a good decision by watching The Political Insider, and make a better decision by subscribing if you haven't already. Thank you for joining me today.